Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today at the fifth and final online roundtable of the Malaria Gamechanger series. And our title today, Medicine, Quality and Innovations to Detect Substandard and Falsified Medicines in Asia and the Pacific. So the Malaria Gamechanger series gathers stakeholders for global health through a webinar discussion on existing and new tools and strategies to advance both health security and malaria elimination in the region. Today is the fifth in a series of roundtables so far, and you can find recordings of all the previous discussions on the Appelmar YouTube channel. So before we get started, I want to point out a few mechanics or roundtable procedures so that you are aware how we're going to run the session. First of all, very, very important for you to make use of the chat box. So if you have any views or any comments, please write them there. We love an engaging and productive session with you. Secondly, we are going to record everything. So please be aware that you can maybe see the whole edition again on social media or on YouTube. There will be a talk show style format today, so there will be no PowerPoint. And so please be aware that we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the time. And if you have any questions, please also write them in the chat box. So this is all for now. I might remind you again. And now I have the pleasure to pass the mic to Dr. Philippe Duneton. He's actually the Executive Director of Unit 8 and one of our hosts today. So Philippe, over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Yeah, great. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be with you this morning. Well, this afternoon, sorry. And it's quite an important. I remember 2 years ago with colleagues from Appelmar and USP, we launched. It was in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, more or less at the same time of the year. Medicine we can trust coalition, and I think that's it's important because of course substandard drug is an issue. Is an issue that should be tackled better on a more systematic way, for sure. But it's important to build that coalition. It's important to look at what we can do, of course, with a specific attention for malaria drug, of course. That's also, I'm welcoming RBM, a close friend. Close friend by the idea, but close friend because we are the same floor at the Global Health Campus in Geneva, even if for the time being we are all teleworking. But I think that this issue deserves a very strong commitment from all the partners, but also from the countries. And I think it's absolutely key that we are coming together to see the progress and the challenges we can address, building a network and with the country a space to have a good quality drug, which is quite important. I will also have the pleasure to introduce Stéphanie Sédou, the French ambassador for global health. She is also the board member at United and also at the Global Fund. I know that France and Ambassador Sédou has also this fight for quality drugs quite high in the agenda. So welcome, Stéphanie, and I'm happy to give you the floor. Welcome, Stéphanie.
Well, thank you very much, Philippe. It's a pleasure to greet you, Executive Director of Unitaid, directors and representatives, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. I'm very pleased to have been invited by Unitaid and LPMA and the Vector Control Platform for this important event in the fight against malaria and substandard and falsified medicines. I'm particularly pleased since I had participated already in September at the very important event, Asia-Europe Virtual Forum on Combating Substandard and Falsified Medicines, where this roundtable was already announced. Now, as we know, and Philippe recalled, billions of people are lacking access to the medicines, the vaccines, the medical devices, and the other health products that they need. And according to a WHO assessment last June, 10% of medicines sold in low and middle income countries are substandard and falsified. Now, with this current health crisis, with the COVID pandemic, it is absolutely critical that we do not lower our efforts in the fight against other mortal, lethal pandemics such as malaria. For instance, it's been said that falsified chloroquine products have been reported to be circulating more widely since the outbreak. And I draw your attention in this respect to the WHO's call to action a couple of days ago, which called for better action to fight malaria through a better targeting of interventions, through new tools and increased funding, which are needed to change the global trajectory of the disease and to reach internationally agreed targets. Indeed, thanks, Philippe, for reminding of the long-standing engagement of France in this issue and in the fight against malaria, in the issue of falsified medicines, as well as in the fight against malaria. In Ouagadougou in 2017, right after his election, President Emmanuel Macron declared that France will be at the side of those who fight against the traffic of falsified medicines. He said that this scourge affects not only the sick, but often the poorest, which is an injustice squared, and that this fight is a fight which France had initiated with others in 2009 and will maintain. And indeed, in 2009, the call of Cotonou, which was launched by former President Jacques Chirac, had created a momentum to improve information, training technicians, and developing binding regulations for the distribution of medicines, overall reinforcing the right of patients to have access to medicines of controlled quality. Against malaria, France acts at different levels. Well, within the Global Fund, we were much involved in the successful replenishment of the Global Fund late last year, and in UNITAID, which is committed, as Philippe recalled, to making available innovative solutions to prevent, to treat, and to diagnose malaria faster, cheaper, and more effectively. France is the leading contributor to UNITAID and promotes the organization which is supporting the WHO pre-qualification program for medicines since 2006 and for diagnostics tests since 2009. We also acknowledge the important role of UNITAID in the Meds We Can Trust awareness campaign launched in 2018 as part of its partnership with the APLMA. France also relies on the 5% initiative, which funds, among other things, operational research projects, particularly in West Africa, to monitor the effectiveness of existing tools and to test innovative interventions. Initiative 5% is about technical capacity. And we also remember, you mentioned RBM, Philippe, the successful event organized in Paris in close partnership with RBM on the 25th of April 2019 for World Malaria Day, which generated significant and high-level mobilization in France and raised the French public's awareness on these issues. Also want to recall that France has high-level skills and expertise on malaria and vectors with the CNR, Institut Pasteur, IRD, which can be used to contribute to the elimination of malaria. We welcome the grant agreement of $6.4 million, which was signed in April between UNITAID and the Montpellier-based company Medincell to fund the formulation and preclinical activities of a 3-month active injectable format of ivermectin, a drug which is used to neutralize the malaria transmission vector. And in line with both partners' commitment to ensure equitable access to health products in low and middle income countries, and to have a significant impact on the most vulnerable populations, MedinCell will grant a non-exclusive license to the medicines patent pool to distribute the product through the public sector in low and middle income countries. Way to go. So reliable access to safe, affordable and high quality medicine is essential to prevent the use of falsified and substandard medicines. And in this respect, measures to reinforce quality supply chain and national regulatory health authorities, as well as to reinforce detection, should be encouraged. Strengthening health systems and ensuring that people have access to high quality and affordable healthcare and services are key to achieve the goal of universal health coverage. As you will show during this roundtable, the progress is real, but the challenges to eliminate malaria and to fight against substandard and falsified medicines, particularly in Asia, are still many and important. And the fight against falsified and substandard health products is calling for a multi-sectorial approach and coordinated response. The WHO has established a member states mechanism to coordinate efforts and to deepen cooperation, and France supports the WHO's global surveillance and monitoring system, the GSMS, which is deployed in many areas of the world. We also encourage practical cooperation between Asia and European partners, between the Asian and the European Union. The EU, the European Union, has established a strong legal framework for the licensing, manufacturing, and distribution of medicines. It has voted a directive on falsified medicines for human use, which introduced harmonized safety and strengthened control measures across Europe. And the European Medicines Agency is working closely with its partners on the implementation of these laws and with the WHO. And the cooperation between our vast regions must be a way to exchange expertise and means to track and prevent falsified drugs. France has also played a major role in the development of several other multilateral initiatives. It contributed to the drafting and adoption of the Medicrime Convention, the Council of Europe Convention on the Counterfeiting of Medical Products and Similar Crimes Threatening Public Health. In this context, we can only welcome the declaration issued at the end of the AZM conference, proposing key recommendations such as reinforcing national, regional, and international collaborations to ensure the balance between supply and demand of quality active pharmaceutical ingredients for essential medicines and prevent shortages, especially during challenging times such as the COVID pandemic. Finally, if the success of the Global Fund's replenishment last year was essential to accelerate the fight against malaria, since it alone, the Global Fund, provides nearly 60% of international funding, the work of UNITAID, which Philippe Dunton will present to you later, is crucial to enable the scaling up of game-changing innovations. For example, and because chloroquine is not the only anti-malarial drug, although it has caught the light in recent months, UNITAID's investment this year have accelerated the global uptake of artesunate injection and prepared health workers to introduce this optimal anti-malarial drug into their care packages. Injectable artesunate is more effective and safer than quinine, but few people had access to it. Before this injection was available, children with severe malaria received an intravenous drip infusion of quinine that had to be changed every 8 hours for at least a week, which was much less convenient. So very hopeful innovations on the table. Very much looking forward to hearing all these exchanges, and thank you again for your kind invitation. I wish you all a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Stéphanie Sidou, the French Ambassador for Global Health. Also thanks to Philippe for the welcoming remarks. So we have a lot of different hosts today, and some of them will be represented actually in our dialogue. Before we are going into our talk show style format, I wanted to highlight a recent event that framed our design. And the government of the Kingdom of Cambodia, through its Ministry of Health and the Asia-Europe Foundation, partnered to host a virtual multi-country, multi-sectoral forum on combating substandard and falsified medicines on the 29th and the 30th of September this year. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to Riko Kimoto. She's a project manager at the Sustainable Development and Public Health Department at the Asia-Europe Foundation. She's with us today, and I will ask her to provide us with a brief overview of the recommendation from the forum, which will frame our discussion today. Rico, over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this important roundtable. As I'm introduced, my name is Reiko. I'm a project manager in charge of public health theme at Asia Europe Foundation, ASEF. ASEF is an intergovernmental not-for-profit organization located in Singapore. We are the only permanently established institution of Asia Europe meeting, ASEM. The members of ASEM is called as ASEM partners, which consist of 31 European and 22 Asian countries, including EU and ASEAN Secretariat. ASEF Public Health Network and Ministry of Health Cambodia hosted Asia-Europe Virtual Forum on combating substandard and falsified medicines on 29th and 30th of September this year, as just said. Thank you. The idea of forum came to us in an occasion of ASEM Summit, where the head of states of 53 partners gather. ASEM Summit is the biggest event of ASEM, which is held biannually. And the next summit, ASEM 13, will be hosted by the government of Cambodia. Considering ASEM covers approximately 60% of the world population, bringing up the issue of substandard and falsified medicines to the summit will have a significant impact on combating substandard and falsified medicines, and it is a chance to receive further political support leading to more action needed. The forum provided a unique opportunity to gather diverse sectors together. It was attended by over 200 participants virtually, covering various sectors including health, law enforcement, and regulation across Asia-Europe. The forum proposed about 12 key recommendations, and I'd like to share some of them today, especially ones related to detection and reporting of substandard and falsified medicines. The ASEM partners should recognize that substandard and falsified medicines are a global public health risk, requiring a coordinated response to prevent, detect, and respond to this issue. The ASEM partners should acknowledge an urgent need to protect their citizens from substandard and falsified medicines, and especially in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, to call for integrated strategies against substandard and falsified medicines in the emergency responses measures. In this regard, the ASEM partners need to work on the detection of substandard and falsified medicines related to the prevention and treatment of COVID-19. The ASEM partners should establish robust regulatory and health system and give appropriate training to healthcare professionals and inspectors to prevent, to detect, and to respond to substandard and falsified medicines. These regulatory systems could consider the gaps of the existing national and international laws or treaties on global trade. The ASEM partners should strengthen the collaboration across sectors at all levels to effectively tackle the substandard and falsified medicines issues. The areas to be focused on are supply chain, quality control, capacity, and surveillance system. The ASEM partners should work together through existing mechanisms and/or new mechanisms at national, regional, or global level on the establishment of effective systems to track substandard and falsified medicines. ASEAN Health Ministers Meeting, Asia-Europe Forum, and other high-level summits could be used as platforms for the ASEM partners to work together to improve the reporting systems and preventive actions of substandard and falsified medicines. The ASEM partners should promote the sharing of experiences, best practices, Results from the surveillance system, trace and tracking systems, and other related information on substandard and falsified medicines. As you can see, a lot of emphasis are made on collaboration, both international and cross-sectoral. A single sector approach will not work on combating substandard and falsified medicines, and one country alone cannot solve this issue in an interdependent world. These recommendations will be elevated to the next ASM Summit, ASM13, scheduled on 1st and 2nd June 2021 in Cambodia. And all the presentation materials during our forum, the full report of proposed recommendations can be found on our website if you are interested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riko Kimoto, for providing us with this overview of the important recommendations which came out of the Asia-Europe Virtual Forum in September. So in our online session today, we want to propose taking one of those forward. We noted the importance of improving detection and reporting of substandard and falsified medicines, having the right tools to do so in remote areas, and the right cooperation mechanisms to share information effectively. So we will also highlight today examples from the region of effective collaboration across agencies to combat SFMs. So our discussion today will revolve around understanding the health concerns that SFMs pose, the mechanisms for detection of SFMs and information sharing on SFMs, the role of national regulatory authorities in ensuring and monitoring quality of medicines, and last but not least, the whole of society approach in responding to the threat of substandard and falsified medicines. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this will be in form of an online roundtable discussions. The organizers have invited a tremendous amount of experts. We have so much expertise in the room. I'm very glad that I will be in dialogue with them for approximately 50 minutes or 45 minutes now. And then we're gonna have Q&A afterwards. So if you have a question at our speakers, so please write them in the chat box, and if you can indicate to whom you address the question. It's not so helpful if you have a question for everybody. And there is a team of people in the back who will help me to prioritize the question so that we can answer hopefully the most relevant, the most interesting. So I would like now to introduce our guests, and I will do this in an alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with Mr. Anthony Tan. He's the General Manager and Senior Director of APAC, the United States Pharmacopoeia, or USP in Singapore. He leads all the USP functions in the region, including customer engagement, external affairs, scientific affairs, and USP education. Welcome. And then from Lao PDR, we are joined by Dr. Bunsu. He's the Deputy Director General of the Food and Drug Department at the Ministry of Health. And he has been with the Food and Drug Department already since 1994. And he has also been the WHO Pharmacovigilance Pilot Project Manager or focal point for Lao PDR. And he did also the project on antiretroviral drug monitoring. Welcome to our session. Then with us, we have Dr. Céline Caillé. She's the Deputy Head of the Medicine Quality Research Group of the Infectious Diseases Data Observatory of the Moro Tropical Health Network. And she has been with IDO since 2015. And she's actually a pharmacist and a former resident of the Hospital of Toulouse. So she brings a lot of different expertise to the table. By video, we will be joined by His Excellency General Sopada Meak. He's the Secretary of State at the Ministry of Interior in Cambodia and also the President of the Cambodian Counterfeit Committee, also known as CCCC. Then we are joined by Professor Paul Newton. He's a Professor of Tropical Medicine at the University of Oxford and head of the Worldwide Anti-Malaria Resistance Network Quality Scientific Group. And he has been an infectious disease doctor who has just moved, I think, after 20 years from out of the region. I think he was in Laos most of the time, but also in Thailand, now back to Oxford. So welcome, Professor Paul. Then we are joined by Pernette Boudillon-Estève. She's a team lead for incidents in substandard and falsified medical products at the World Health Organization. She's joining us, of course, from Geneva very early. Good morning. And she joined WHO in 2012 as an analyst for the global surveillance and monitoring systems for substandard and falsified medical products. But Pernette also worked for other organizations like UNODC, UNIT-8, and the French Foreign Ministry. Bonjour. And you have already met Philippe Duneton. He gave the welcome remarks. He's the executive director of UNIT-8, bringing more than 25 years to the table, and he has been an expert on HIV/AIDS, on infectious and tropical diseases and public health. And he joined UNIT-8 in 2006, but he was also a practicing doctor in Paris and was twice the advisor to the French Ministry of Health under Minister Bernard Kouchner. And last but not least, we are joined by Mr. Stanislas Barrault. He is the global head of anti-counterfeiting at Novartis. And Stanislas oversees the design and implementation of Novartis' strategy against counterfeit and falsified medicines. And Stanislas actually also brings experience from the region. He worked before in China, in Hong Kong, Ho Chi Minh, and in Dubai. So everybody, welcome to our session today, and let me go right into it. And one more time, last reminder, if you have any comments, please write them in the chat. If you have any questions, please indicate to whom they are addressed. So let me see where I start. Okay, so give me 1 second. Here we are. So let me kick off the first roundtable. Sorry about messing up my notes. So much to say. So maybe a first question to Ms. Pernette. What do we know about poor quality medicines to date? And can you give us an idea based on evidence from WHO reports? For example, what categories of medicines are most affected? Pernette.
I was muted. Hello, Jörg. Thank you very much for this question. Well, substandard and falsified medical products have always existed. It's a very, very old problem, but it's really only in the last decade that WHO has started to collect data in a standardized fashion that allows us to evidence the problem. Since 2013, WHO maintains a global database on substandard and falsified medical products, and that covers medicines, vaccines, and in vitro diagnostics. It's a case reporting system, so you can't extrapolate the data to estimate prevalence in countries, but it certainly does give an idea of the scope, scale, and harm caused by substandard and falsified medical products. Approximately 45% of the over 3,000 product records in the database are made up of antimicrobials. It's mainly antibiotics and antimalarials. The next most frequently reported therapeutic categories are antineoplastics, so that's cancer products, and nervous system medicines. And what's interesting is that we've got products that fall within all price ranges. In fact, 70% of the recorded products have got a reported price of less than $10 US. Now, $10 US may seem affordable, but we can talk about that later in the driving forces. Each product record corresponds to either a single dose or actually millions of product doses when a container is discovered, for example. And almost all of these recorded products have got insufficient or no active pharmaceutical ingredients. Sometimes they even contain a toxic dose of an unexpected ingredient. So you can imagine the consequences of having a substandard or falsified resuscitation medicine, for example. In 2015, as Ambassador Seydoux mentioned, we did conduct a literature review on surveys that had been done looking at the quality of medicines in the field. And out of the 50,000 samples that were part of this meta-analysis, 10.5 failed that analysis in low middle income countries. And this 10.5% is a very conservative estimate because there's a lot of variation across regions. And we did two model estimates on the aggregated deaths caused by substandard and falsified antimalarials and antibiotics. And those are 286,000 added deaths every year, but I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. To give you a little bit more perspective on something that's maybe more recent and from the field, last year we conducted field surveys in 6 countries that targeted antimicrobials, antimalarials, and antibiotics. We collected 1,800 samples, and out of those, 20% were sent for full lab testing. And the failure rate of those tested samples is 42% overall. That's almost 50% of those antimicrobials collected in those 6 countries available at patient level, which are substandard or falsified. And in the case of antimalarials, the failure rate was 53%. So that's more than half. And what's interesting to note is that a big proportion of those samples were collected during covert mystery shopper techniques. So the figures are probably closer to reality in some places than compared to some other conservative estimates. Over.
Thank you, Pernette. This is very, very interesting. And I want to continue the conversation with Professor Paul Newton. Where can our audience get actually the latest information on reports and news items and recent articles on poor quality medicine? I understand you are one of the leading experts on that field. Paul.
Thank you very much for the question. Are you able to hear me okay? Thank you. So no, thanks very much for the question. So there are 4 main categories of data available in the public domain that participants can use. Firstly, there's the system that Pernette just mentioned from WHO and the 2 wonderful reports from 2017, and some other international organizations such as UN ODC also issue reports. Then secondly, there are the national medicine regulatory authorities who also in some countries issue reports. Thirdly, there are NGOs and academia. For example, the United States Pharmacopoeia has a large database called the MQDB. The Medicines We Can Trust project, that campaign that Dr. Kate Bond will, I think, talk about later. The International Institute for the Research Against Counterfeit Medicines, based in Paris, also has a plethora of reports on their website. I think all of these links are available on the information sheet that I think the webinar will distribute to all the participants. And then we've developed a system in Oxford for trying to collate together the scientific literature. It's very on Google Scholar or on PubMed. One can, with a lot of time and effort, understand what is available in the scientific literature. But we've developed, working with Harvard and Boston universities, a system that allows one on a map to see the quality reports in the public domain of the quality of antimalarials, antibiotics, and many other classes of essential medicines. And that's called the Surveyor. We've also developed a thing called the Globe that scours the internet in multiple languages, English, French, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Spanish, to look at what reports there are in Google News about medicine quality, with the limitation that we know that these will be potentially less accurate and objective than those from international organizations, regulatory authorities, and scientific literature. But they give like early warnings of issues that need to be investigated. And then latterly, there's the industry as well, hold lots of information, the pharmaceutical industry. I think there needs to be, going forward, there needs to be much more emphasis on the joining up of these databases and much more emphasis on the more optimum sharing of data, bearing in mind the need for protocols for the risks and benefits of releasing sometimes difficult information. But I think we need to, as a community, to work better together to share data more freely in the interests of public health. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Professor Paul. And let me bring our colleague from Lao PDR into the conversation and hear a little bit experience from a specific country. Dr. Bunsu, can you share perspectives from the national regulatory authorities' point of view? Has the circulation of substandard and falsified medicines been an issue in the Lao PDR? And maybe also, because given times, has COVID-19 had an impact?
Thank you very much. I also thank for give me opportunity to join the roundtable meeting for today, and I could share experience from Lao today roundtable meeting for today. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. For Lao situation so far, actually we have no very serious the problem about the substandard and also counterfeit medicine so far. But for the last decade, we face a problem with the counterfeit medicine. When we implement of the Grant Fund project for anti-malaria medicine surveillance activity, we found some, but now decrease of the number of substandard, and so no found the counterfeit medicine. Based on the report from the laboratory, we also collected some medicine from the market in year 2018, year 2019, and also this year. At least around 300 sample was collected, and based on the test result, there are no counterfeit, but they have very few substandard in some parameter, like dissolution testing is no pass, but very few. They have planned to collect the sample based on the plan is focused on the anti-malaria supported by a RISE project. And also based on the plan, also we focus on the antibiotics also. And the finding is can be used as evidence and reference for us to plan of the surveillance in the next year. That's why the number of the testing is increasing. No, decreasing is the number of the sample also decrease from year 2018 because we found not very much serious problem. But in the current year for the COVID-19 outbreak, we also not found any substandard and counterfeit because we also locked down the country. Then the illegal import is very difficult for them. And also we found only some medical products, the substandard, like face mask and also alcohol hand gel, so on. But not so many items we found. But so far we also plan for the next year also for the surveillance of the sample for the test in the national laboratory. But we also have some problem with the budget for the collection of the sample because the fund support for the donor is decreased so far. I don't know how long I can talk to the roundtable meeting today. Maybe I can go next to the question or for this question first.
Let's talk a little bit more about the impact of COVID-19, and I wanted to bring Panet into the conversation. I come back to you in a moment, Dr. Bunsu. Okay. Panet, I guess we gonna need some time to see the full impact of the current pandemic on health outcomes. So what could be, in your opinion, the impact of COVID-19 on the quality of medicines, and what are some of the challenges that countries can expect?
I'm muted. Yes, I'm not muted. I think there's two main outcomes, two big types of impact that COVID-19 will have on substandard and falsified medical products. On the first hand, firstly, the current pandemic has exacerbated the driving forces around substandard and falsified medical products. That's the environment and the market dynamics that have shifted so that they're much more likely to have more substandard and falsified versions circulating. And not only there are more of these, but they're more likely to reach patients. And these driving forces are constrained access, poor governance, and weak technical capacity. Secondly, and this goes back to a vicious cycle, the more substandard and falsified medical products reach patients, the more this will erode trust in systems. And this pandemic has certainly showed how much confidence in authorities, in health systems, in experts is essential if we are to achieve any sort of compliance with the public health guidelines. So people who work in healthcare expect that the products they use will work as described on the box, in fact, to actually be what's on the box. So the fundamental issue really is trust. Just as patients need to be able to trust our own expertise, health workers, pharmacists, healthcare professionals need to be able to trust that the products that they prescribe, that they are using, actually do what they're meant to do, which is to prevent or treat illnesses and improve people's health. So you can imagine how the COVID-19 pandemic might undermine this trust in health systems. In terms of challenges faced by countries, there's going to be significant differences by regions, by level of resources and disease burdens. We live in a world of globalized supply chains, of globalized everything, and we're all vulnerable to substandard and falsified medical products. It's just the same as with any infectious disease. If you look at substandard and falsified medical products like an epidemic, we're all vulnerable because we're all connected. So it's really essential to strengthen procurement systems that will allow us to have access to safe, efficacious products. So this goes by strengthening regulatory authorities, of course, which do play a critical role in ensuring access to these quality assured, safe and effective medical products. There is really a key role to be played by these regulatory authorities in the development and in the authorization of medical products. And that's a more positive impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has showcased how essential the work of regulatory authorities is in terms of both pre and post-market. And substandard and falsified medical products tend to occur in the post-market space, but you need to have the pre-market that functions with reliance and with all the other systems in place beforehand as well. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Panette. You talked about trust and you talked also about the role of regulatory authorities. Dr. Bunsu, you're representing one of these agencies. What is the role of the Food and Drug Department in ensuring the quality of medicines in circulation? And what support does your department need to continue your very important work? I think you have to unmute yourself, Dr. Bunsu.
Regarding the role or function of the Food and Drug Department of the fighting of the counterfeit and substandard medicine during the pandemic of the COVID-19, actually we have the food and drug lines from the central level and also provincial level. We also train the inspector in the provincial level to do the post-marketing surveillance and also inspect the supply chain of the medicine in the market. And we also have in the central level, we have Bureau of Food and Drug Inspector inspection, that they also do the training for the inspector and also provide them the technique and also provide them the test kit for testing and also support the reference standard to the national laboratory. And also we train the pre-market system for the drug registration, how to evaluation of the dossier form and firm of the medicine is a safe and good quality before register. We also have the system of the centralized procurement in the country. It means all the province, they have the one type of the procurement practice. We also screening of the medicine before contact with the supplier, and also we also look for the good supplier and source, also price of the medicine. And also the competition is very fruitful. Among them, we can select the good one for the healthcare facility in Laos.
Thank you, Dr. Bunsu. So this was an example from Lao PDR. We have Dr. Anthony Tan from USP with us. And from your experience working in the Asia Pacific region, what are some of the challenges, in your opinion, faced by national regulatory authorities, especially during COVID-19 times?
Well, thank you for the question. And firstly, again, thanks for inviting me to be part of this roundtable. The COVID-19 pandemic has actually disrupted and exposed a lot of vulnerabilities in the medicine supply chain. And it's really this impact of this disruption, right? Shortages in medical products, as well as an increased risk of substandard and falsified medicines, leaking into the supply chain. That, of course, can result in, of course, reduced access to patients, patient harm, okay? And as Panet has mentioned, really important part is the public trust in the medicines, okay? That can lead to an erosion in that trust. Okay? The supply chain of medical products is really complex, okay? And important origin, production volume, distribution channels, and integrity of products can be lost during this disruption. Even in normal times, there's a limited line of sight, okay, of information across the supply chain. There's lack of consistent and standardized data, and regulators therefore are not able to make informed decisions to assess and mitigate risks of supply shortages and quality compliance gaps and issues. This leads to the challenge faced by regulators in protecting the population from substandard and falsified medicines. Okay, due to these vulnerabilities as well as some underlying weaknesses, capacity of manufacturers to produce quality assured medicines, the uneven regulatory environment across the supply chain, constraints in post-market surveillance and regulatory enforcements to ensure adherence to quality standards, and inspection capacity as well. In addition, regulatory systems should also be strengthened to efficiently review new products, especially to prevent, diagnose, and treat COVID-19 and related diseases. So, in short, the pandemic has really heightened the urgency for collective effort to address all these challenges. Okay, over.
Thank you, Anthony. And let's bring one more voice to the table. And before we proceed with the rest of our dialogue here, we have a short video for you to share, capturing some of the perspectives from Myanmar and from the Myanmar Food and Drug Administration. So my colleagues had the honor of speaking to Dr. Tenji Zin and Dr. Shui Leng over the weekend to hear their views on what is the current status of reporting substandard and falsified medicines in Myanmar and what is needed to support detection, testing, and reporting. So I will request my colleagues to share the video.
Yes, the regulatory agency send the post-market surveillance sample to our laboratories. We receive the post-market surveillance pharmaceutical samples and samples. After that, we perform the testing. Our results sent to our regulatory agency drug control section.
After testing, we inform the importer as well as the SAM local authority for recall and For importer perspective, what amount remaining in their warehouse, remaining stock and distribution list, and inform the importer to notify to the manufacturer. We have the substandard product. This is we recall and we import suspension. We importation suspension up to 6 months. We have the inspector. We have the Food and Drug Supervisory Committee. This is the administrative committee. This committee is each and every state and region, as well as the district and township level. So the hands and so many branches in our country. For this reason, this committee member, including Myanmar Police Force and General Administration, so for that matter, together with, we have the 3 specific contact points. I am Dr. Jimoa Wayne, previously our deputy director. So we have the specific contact point, so we know which is the illegal or counterfeit product or something like that. We have some counterfeit issue. We have the cooperation with one of the WHO workshop. They have the specific point of contact. We contact and we seize the information exchange or something like that. IRING system means ADB support. They have some pre-market control and post-market inspection and reporting of some ADR or something like that. This is maybe limited functional due to some maybe need the IT support or some new stuff for some training activity for reporting.
So thank you very much for sharing that video. And it was great to hear about this interministerial committee in Myanmar. And also I took note of the capacity issue for detection and reporting. It's still limited. And maybe with additional training, the FDA could make better use of its existing regulatory information systems to support reporting of substandard and falsified medicines. So having heard more about some of these challenges, what are some of the actions that can be taken to secure medical product quality through the supply chain? And I want to ask Anthony Tan again in this respect. Maybe we can hear some examples of USP's initiatives to support the countries. Anthony, can you share a little bit?
Oh, yes. Here, in USP, our mission is, to improve global health through public standards and related programs, to help ensure quality and safety of medicines. Our work strengthens quality assurance across the whole global medicine supply chain. I'd like to share you maybe four examples of what we are doing. Firstly, we are working to increase transparency of global medicine supply chain. Through something that we have recently formed over the past few months, the USP Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Center. We're working towards enhancing traceability to include sources of starting raw materials and finished dosage forms. We are taking out data, we're mapping it with public and proprietary data sources in order to paint a picture of upstream pharmaceutical supply. And this can be used to characterize and predict vulnerabilities in the upstream supply chain, so that stakeholders, including regulators, can improve communications and sharing of information and therefore take necessary mitigative actions. Related to this is really about helping to build a more resilient supply chain through deployment of tools, to address areas of vulnerabilities, such as the APAC supply chain integrity toolkit for medical products. Under the ambit of the USP APAC Center of Excellence, USP and Taylor University, together with the Ministry of Health Malaysia. We are jointly organizing a series of 3-monthly seminars, accumulating in a 2-day training program in March, okay, on supply chain integrity of medical products. Okay. Thirdly, okay, we continue to work on our support in strengthening regulatory systems and quality assurance, okay, through partnering with USAID, Global Fund, WHO, and regional bodies, government, and stakeholders in low and middle income countries. This to support regulators and manufacturers to increase patient access to quality assured medical products. Okay. Most recently, we have been selected by the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to strengthen laboratories and quality assurance in Cambodia and Laos, as part of the ongoing Indo-Pacific regulatory strengthening program. Okay. And last but not least, we provide continuous training program for the use of our documentary and physical standards, okay? And because that touches every part of the supply chain, okay, from active and non-active ingredients and excipients to compounding and labeling, okay? And really, it's part of our mission to improve public health through quality standards. Okay, over.
Thank you, Anthony, for sharing some of the initiatives, transparency, resilience, knowledge management, a lot of initiatives you are doing. Let me bring Philippe into the conversation. And Unitaid as an organization, I think, supports the scale up of innovations that can help with malaria elimination, but you also, I think, work on TB control and more recently COVID-19. So, Philippe, how does quality come into play at the scale up stage?
Yes, thanks, and thanks for all the participants, from Stephanie to Pernet to Professor Paul and US Pharmacopoeia, of course. I mean, it shows several things. First, I think that there is a need to, if we want to tackle that, to work at different levels. I think the question of awareness is absolutely key from the government, and thanks for Cambodia and Myanmar to step in. The place of a regulatory authority, of course, but the distribution system, and in particular also the people, because the awareness of the people is a way that I think and we think that works. I've been exposed to that fight in my capacity of Director General of the French Regulatory Agency and also the chair of the board of the Medicine Agency in previous life. And I saw that, of course, very different systems have to also fight and use different ways to fight the substandard and, of course, falsified in. So I think I share the pain and I share the difficulty also for all the colleagues in the world that are being confronted to that. And I think that's the value of the partnership we have with APELMA, with USP and RBM is absolutely key to work with the countries to help to address that. So it's a very comprehensive way to think. So maybe I will start with and I will explain the 3 levels of what we are thinking as an organization. First, as you know, everything we are doing is to promote and push equitable access to innovation, because we believe that innovation is part of the solution, of course, with the strengthening of health services, but it's a way, if you look at what the power in our experience is to how to simplify, how to accelerate the response and the scale up, but also how to transform access to care and to products. So in a way, part of the thinking is also focused on decrease the risk of falsified medicine as substandard. And I think that to the point from Paul, access to data is key, because we need all at all levels to think about risk analysis and risk mitigation in terms of substandard and falsified. And I will not go into the fight from, of course, a legal perspective. I think it's an important part, but I will concentrate on the public health challenges. So first, and of course, we need to, talking about risk, there is a specific risk for antimicrobials, as Pernet was saying, but also anti-malarial. And the reason why is because in most of the countries, anti-malarials are procured by the patient themselves and have a tendency, of course, because the access is not there, to pay for low-cost drugs that, of course, may be also at risk for substandard and falsified. So in the work that we are doing in malaria, we always take very seriously the price and the quality at the same time. So that's, of course, what we are doing. It was mentioned by Stephanie for injectable artesunate, the work that we are doing in Africa, but also in Asia, to fight Vivax, for example, which is, I think, also a great challenge that we need to do for elimination of malaria. So again, thinking about equitable access, thinking about the quality, but also the price is a way to respond, because you create a market with good quality drugs at, of course, a very affordable price. You, in fact, you get away from the bad guys who may have an interest, of course, to take some part of the market. So I think that thinking is absolutely key. It's the kind of thing also we are doing with our work of ACTA, because as you may not know, Unitaid is part of the response from ACTA for COVID-19 with our colleagues of Wellcome Trust, Global Fund, and FIND, in particular in the fight to find a therapeutic that works, and also diagnostic in terms of rapid test. Of course, the fact that we have that new tools increase the risk that bad guys want to have part of the market. But if we can have, and that's the kind of work that we are doing, to have this for low prices, of course, the incentive for the bad guy to come to the market is lower. So what are the next steps? First, as I mentioned, I think that we want to really push the comprehensive approach in terms of what is the picture of the risk in terms of substandard and falsified medicine. And I think that the approach that APEMA has in that partnership, including the platform for vector control, but also looking at what are the challenges for regulatory authority, but also the distribution, including the point of distribution, is absolutely key. And I think that the way to engage with the country, working with them, is absolutely key. I think a second point that we are looking, and we have a regular landscape with some of you, is how to increase the traceability of the distribution. And there are technology there, again, based on data, and you know that access to data will be transformative also for the health system in terms of looking at the epidemiology through the test, but also how to supply and increase the quality of care network, but also distribution system. There are technology there that can be used. The question is more the normative part of this, because to work, it has to be adopted not just by an industry, but by the countries. And I think that there is some kind of thinking also from WHO point of view, but I think it was mentioned by our Cambodia. So there is work to be done in that not absolutely easy. And the last point, and I will finish by that, and again, we are looking at that, we also value the capacity to control several points in the distribution system. And of course, we know all big system and HPLC that can produce results, but it's quite heavy to deploy. So we are constantly looking at what kind of technology can be used to be a point of care technology that can help, for example, checkpoint at the distribution system or at the end of the system, or including inspection from the police of the inspector and the pharmaceutical system to do that. Unfortunately, so far, even if we have seen progress in the last years and months, we don't have the perfect solution for now. So this is something that we focus on and to look, not only as prevention. And I hope that at some point this technology can be used to help, of course, to have the control in a way that it can be decentralized to help the prevention and the detection of substandard falsified medicines. I will stop there, but again, I thank all the contributors because they paint a picture where there are opportunities, but it's something that needs several interventions at the same time. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Philippe. So let me shift the conversation a little bit now to we talk about whole of society approach. So, and to frame our conversation, we all know it's not up to all the regulatory authorities. Many other agencies are engaged in this fight, and the Cambodian Counterfight Committee, the CCCC, is committed to and has been at the forefront of efforts to cope the falsification, to cope the circulation of falsified and substandard products in the country. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have one colleague joining us by video. So let us hear from His Excellency General Sopana Meech about the work of the CCC through a short video recording.
CCC function have been achieved, have been successful in the last 5 years up until now, is because of involvement, because of participation of the concerned agency. First is among the public sector. For example, CCC have to coordinate the effort between Ministry of Public Health. It means that the public health officer, custom, immigration, all the people concerned in the public sector, in the government. And also from the private sector is the company that import the medicine. They report about some violate their copyright, their exclusive right, and also the information that provided by those private sector. And also another crucial part is the consumer, is the Cambodian population themselves. They also report about something that happened, something wrong that happened during their consuming of the medicine, during their treatment, their taking of the medicine. They report the accurate, the irregularity of their treatment, of something that happened along the way. So public awareness is really, really important to the success. And by combining all of these efforts, multi-approach and multi-participation of the sector in the society is crucial to our successful performance. The role of CCC, particularly regarding to malaria elimination, is also crucial, because why? The work, the duty that have been conducted by the CCCC would ensure the quality drug circulated, the non-expiry. It means that the medicine that is still valid can reach the hand of the patient. So, and also prevent the substandard, the falsified medicine to fall into the hand of the patient, of the consumer. That is why, you know, it's so much important in malaria disease elimination. If it happens to patient that got the not complete dose of malaria drug, of malaria treatment, so the patient can be resistant to the drug. That is so crucial in the campaign in the front of combating malaria. And CCC have been successful in this campaign against counterfeit medicine. So it's overall, it can be effective in the combating malaria, in the combating this deadly disease in the region as well. The committee focus on medicine that is substandard, falsified, unregistered, no license, no permission from Ministry of Public Health, and also the medicine that out of date. It means that is expiry date. That some of the trader, some of the seller that try to sell that to the public. So this is we focus on this, and we are quite successful in cracking down all of these medical products. And this year we have been raided the place, some illegal pharmacy that have been distribute all of these illegal medical product, and we seize several tons of this medical product, and we dump, we destroy it, and also in effort to prevent and protect our population from COVID-19 spread out, we also have conduct several operations, raiding a place, raiding a company that distribute the low quality of mask, the alcohol, the gel, hand sanitizer that is below the quality that's set forward by the medical, by the Ministry of Public Health. So we are quite successful, and we are really have make a significant contribution in the country in terms of protect public health and population well-being, and also in COVID-19 prevention.
So thank you very much to our colleague from Cambodia, General Sopana Meech. And I would like to now bring also the private sector into the conversation. We talk about a whole society approach. And we have with us our colleague from Novartis, Mr. Stan. So can you tell us about the role of partnerships in the fight against substandard and falsified medicines?
Thank you very much, Joost. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Well, quite simply, actually, public-private partnerships are the cornerstone of everything we do against falsified medicines. It's a key to success in our view. So in the essence of time, I'll just highlight a few examples, recent ones in the context of COVID-19. If you want to talk about public awareness, for instance, we could talk about the Fight the Fakes campaign as well, that gathers together malaria foundations, pharmacist associations, foundations like the Fondation Chirac, private sector members, and many others as well, engaging into public awareness activities. The next one is actually starting very timely next week, so please stay tuned on this one, but that's definitely an effort in that direction. And next week we'll be obviously focusing on the COVID-19 related impact on falsified medicines, medical products as well. Capacity building as well. I could mention actually the World Customs Organization Operation Stop, Operation Stop was led between last May to mid of July, about a month of activity, gathering 99 countries in the process. There was what we call more than 1,600 interception or seizures. They seized overall 300 million substandard and falsified medicines. They also seized 47 million medical supplies as well. A fairly significant part of it was really COVID-19 related, but by extensions, it was pretty much everything in these seizures in relation to falsified and substandard medicines. It's pretty scary numbers when you think of it over just 4 weeks of activity. But that's a reality of what we're dealing with as well. And again, when it comes to public-private partnership, the Secretary General, when reporting the results of the operation last October, thanked officially all stakeholders involved. So he mentioned UNODC, OLAF, Europol, but also the private sector. He did mention about Novartis, some other private sector companies really contributing to this operation. We do share intelligence. It goes both ways on that what results in a successful operation, despite fairly scary numbers. Detection as well. I could mention another interesting one. When it comes to product detection authentication, there is the Innovative Medicines Initiative. It's a public-private partnership, and a few months ago was announced a series of blockchain use cases. So we're talking about pharma companies, hospitals, universities, patients organizations, tech companies who are gathering under this public-private partnership to empower patients by building a scalable blockchain platform validated through reference use cases, notably in supply chain, but also clinical trial. So let me just give you an example under the supply chain bucket, which is very critical for what we're discussing now. You have, for instance, 2 examples of what we call use cases being developed as we speak now. So one is about the e-leaflet for patient information. So patients who basically scan the product, get product information. And another one related, which we have the pleasure to lead, is about counterfeit and falsified medicines, so that patient can have also a check of the actual product on the packaging to determine whether that's actually a genuine product or not. So it's a very interesting one through the prism of blockchain, which we all know is very promising from a product security perspective. It brings a much higher level of security. We're basically focusing for the anti-counterfeiting use case for blockchain on emerging technology, basically giving patients and supply chain actors a very powerful tool for what we call multi-factor product authentication. Please remember that, because you're going to hear about this quite a few times. It's actually capturing several features across the packaging, the box of medicine, on the combination of which will be what will be actually analyzed through blockchain. So a much more secure way of testing the products. Finally, last example, very quick one, on the policy level. Again, we had the pleasure to join an expert panel with OECD, public sector representative, country representative, associations, NGOs, private sector members, on the preparation that led to the publication of a report last March at the start of COVID in Europe, a report focusing on the societal impacts of counterfeit and falsified medicines, on recommendations as well, policy recommendations. So once again, an example of effective public-private partnership. So I could carry on. As you can see, just over the last few months, a lot happened. And I'm personally, and we are a true believer of public-private partnership. Thank you very much.
Merci, Stanislas. I'm looking at the time, and we are running out of time, and maybe we were too ambitious. So everybody who was asking questions, I got the signal from the organizers that we are going to facilitate as much as possible answers for everybody who posed a question in the chat. So let's see if we can manage to do that. And I would like to request all the speakers now to keep it to 2 minutes max. except when I asked the question to Celine, because she hasn't appeared yet and she's talking about innovations. So let me ask a question now about mechanisms for detection, substandard and falsified medicine, information sharing on substandard and falsified medicine. So to better inform our collective response, we need to know where the problem is, the figures that can help us to understand the scale of the problem. So for that, we need countries to report medicine quality issues into. So Ms. Pennett, maybe one more time, can you tell us more about the WHO reporting system in 2 minutes?
I'll be brief. So in detection, you have to, of course, find something. That's the first thing. And I think that Celine will be speaking about this. And the second bit is you have to report it. There's no point finding something if nobody knows about it. So since 2013, WHO has been running the global surveillance and monitoring system on SF medical products. It's a global system. It's made up of a database, records products and incidents, networks, portals, thematic analysis, all sorts of different items. National regulatory focal points report incidents of substandard and falsified medical products to the global system. And we've developed an online portal that simplifies and accelerates the data collection process. We capture information on the context of discovery, the type of products, the harm caused, and action taken. The database architecture is structured in a way to simplify and accelerate the analysis of data into information. And that means that the database pieces have got to be standardized. You can't analyze if it's not a little bit standardized. So I'll skip over the way in which we standardize for the sake of time. What we want to do basically is we want to create dynamic links between databases, our database and other databases, to identify trends and patterns. So you can have correlations between substandard and falsified medical products, certain adverse event reports, certain types of incidents, and universal health coverage service index, the spread of antimicrobial resistance, the shortage, all sorts of things. So it's this systematic data analysis that has allowed us to understand what are the driving forces of substandard and falsified medical products, which I've mentioned a bit earlier. So the key process is the data is analyzed into information, and that information helps to identify policy, and we can apply that into technical guidance. And then we can, of course, then develop all sorts of projects and other much more applicable projects. On the other hand, we've got the member state mechanism, which is an intergovernmental process. That one, the role is to identify the policy gaps and the challenges. But for policymakers to have efficient decision-making processes, they need to base this on validated evidence, which is what we can provide through our database and the connections with other organizations which are amongst the panel. Over.
Thank you very much, Pennett. And you all know that the Malaria Gamechangers series has a subtitle called A Health Innovation Series. So we are focusing on innovations for health security. And I will ask Dr. Celine Caillé, can you tell us about more what tools or innovations are available today that can help health workers or others detect substandard and falsified medicines in the field? I think that's a question many of our attendees have.
Thank you very much. So there are tens of portable or handheld devices available that could be used for testing the quality of medicines. Some are marketed, some are still under development. The price range from $1 for single-use, very small and simple-to-use devices, to more than tens of thousands of US dollars. So ideally, screening devices should work as rapid diagnostic tests in the same way as the malaria rapid diagnostic tests do. By this, I mean they should be user-friendly, accurate, inexpensive, and fast. So devices would empower inspectors of the quality of medicines to quickly check whether there may be a problem with the quality of the medicine tested. Once a medicine fails a screening test, the sample should be sent for confirmation in a laboratory. You have probably heard of near-infrared and Raman spectrometers. Some are used in airports to detect explosives. There has been some recent development and more affordable spectrometers, especially infrared devices.
1 second, Celine, I think.
Coupled with the smartphone costs, but one very important point is that, sorry?
Can you repeat the last 2 sentences, please? Now you're back.
Yes, thank you. So you've probably heard about near-infrared and Raman spectrometers. Some are used in airports to detect explosives. And there has been some recent development and more affordable spectrometers, especially near-infrared devices, some being coupled with a smartphone, and so very user-friendly. Some Raman also devices exist at lower cost, but one very important point is that these technologies were not primarily designed for the purpose of testing medicines in the form of tablets, capsules, or syrups. In our group, we constantly monitor the available scientific literature, and we have got years of experience of research in evaluating a dozen of different devices. I would like to particularly thank Dr. Bunsu and the Laotian Regulatory Authority and his team who worked with us on these projects to test portable devices in Laos. One thing we learned from the literature and our research work is that it's very unlikely that one device will work for the hundreds of thousands of medicines available on the market. And not one device is able to test the wide number of antimalarials, or one device is not available to test all antibiotics available globally. To make things more complicated, we know that one device cannot currently test the whole quality features that are desired for medicines. For example, some portable screening technologies will tell you whether the active ingredient is present, but will not tell if it's present at the desired amount, and thus won't accurately detect substandard medicines containing lower or higher amounts of the expected active ingredients. Our group and the USP review program have been trying to fill in some of the gaps of evidence, but a lot of work still needs to be done. Research and innovation are needed. As far as I'm aware, there is currently no platform that has put together all the available evidence. Sharing information on these technologies should be considered with caution to avoid criminals to get their hands on the weaknesses of the devices and thus managing to bypass them. With the current knowledge of the devices, we believe that the best way forward to choose the right device to implement in post-marketing surveillance is choosing the right device for the right objective, what we are looking for and where, but also the cost and logistics of the device in each specific context, both upfront cost and logistics and recurring ones. But importantly, fast identification of poor quality medicines will have limited impact if quarantine or recall of suspicious products cannot be acted upon in the absence of legal or regulatory recognition of the screening technology results. Over to me.
Thank you very much, Celine. Very interesting. So a quick heads up, dear attendees, we're gonna probably go over time 5 to 10 minutes, but nevertheless, I have to ask our colleagues to be brief, because we have a final reactor, and for her, it's actually 2:30 in the night, and she's waiting. And so just to put a little bit more pressure on you to be brief. So Stanislas, how can the industry support countries and global agencies with the timely detection of substandard and falsified medicines, and what mechanisms can be adapted to secure the supply chain?
Thank you very much. Well, timely detection and reporting of falsified medicines is critical, is priority number one, and it has its challenges. I will just basically echo what Pernet and Celine just mentioned from the private sector perspective. So Novartis for years has been timely reporting such confirmed incidents to national health authorities as per local regulations. But what's new is really since 2019, Novartis pledged to do the same with WHO. On a voluntary basis. We made that public in the Novartis in Society report. On Pernet would know we've been working closely with her team. We're trying our best to report all confirmed incidents of falsified medicines within 7 days to WHO. It sounds easy, it's not. I'll spare you all the logistical details, but it can be a fairly complex process. But we're very determined to make that happen and support WHO in its effort I think Pernet talked about it on the report on the end game of consolidating all these incidents into one place. We believe that's a great effort we should support. So first of all, we're doing this. But when we say that, what do we mean by timely detecting, authenticating falsified medicines? So we've also built in-house resources, a dedicated team of quality medicine specialists focusing day in, day out on authentication of falsified medicines. And it can be a very complex process. And I think Dr. Céline Caillet just mentioned about this. It is very challenging. We don't do this by visual recognition. We've been asked this many times from various actors in the sector. That doesn't happen, not anymore. I mean, in a tiny proportion, you have to go through a thorough forensic process. And for that, we've built in-house capabilities to make that happen. We have also empowered our regions or team regionally with latest technologies. I think Céline just highlighted a number of them a minute ago. We have empowered our teams on countries with latest technologies, and we're also piloting some new technologies at the moment, not only to be empowered at a regional level, which is the case as we speak, but also to a country level, on bring these authentication technologies to the most remote countries, because we know this is the biggest challenge nowadays. In some remote areas, there is simply no technology available, private sector, public sector, doesn't matter, available to actually test the products and determine whether it's falsified or not. And this is one of the biggest collective challenge we have. Supply chain security, that may be a much longer explanation. Yes, I'm a bit conscious of time. I would just limit myself to say this is an absolutely top priority we have. And I think COVID-19 has put the entire industry to the test to make sure we would protect our supply chain day in, day out. I'm more than happy to respond to any question afterwards from the audience on engaging into this, but I know time is a bit of the essence, so maybe I will stop here if that's okay with you.
Thank you very much, Stan. Very, very interesting. I think we could have another webinar only on that question, supply chain. So Pernet, WHO and the GMS system, how is it adjusting to the challenges spurred by the COVID pandemic? 90 seconds.
Yeah, I was muted. Okay, I'll be brief. So COVID-19 has elevated the issue of substandard and falsified medical products on the public health agenda, politically and technically. We've seen it's disrupted markets and supply chains. It's exacerbated the vulnerabilities for some regions or some products. We know what the driving forces are. So in some cases, we're able to predict where the crises, where the pinch points are going to happen. And so we've tried to adapt to that. And, Stan just said they report to our database, and we're extremely grateful for that. But data is not free. And when people give us something, you have to give them something in return. There's a return on investment. And we try to do that by delivering a number of services that fall under the prevention, detection, and response categories. So for a number of years now, we've been issuing global alerts on products that present an international immediate threat to public health. That falls under the response category. Under the detection category, this year, we've kind of further expanded our service by issuing more developed targeted surveillance lists. And these target surveillance lists basically ask national regulatory authorities to go out and to detect a product which we know is likely to be circulating in their markets, but which may not be. And it goes back to data, it goes back to linking to all sorts of data sets. We want to link to shortages so as to be able to predict where the problem will occur before it has caused harm to the patients. So it might have penetrated the supply chain, but the idea is to detect it as early as possible. The other thing that we've been working on is to try and understand how we move from passive monitoring, where we receive the report once the incident has occurred and caused harm, to more active surveillance. So we're exploring different creative ways of doing that. And my colleagues at Oxford, and Celine in particular, are doing fantastic work on the detection devices. The detection devices, it's basically the diagnostic tool for the quality of a medicine. And we could think of better using existing networks and existing systems to capture early warning signals. This is something that we've explored with antimicrobial resistance. And since we're on the Malaria Gamechangers roundtable, we could think about how do we use malaria rapid diagnostic tests to monitor the efficacy of a treatment. And if the treatment efficacy drops, is this due to some sort of resistance, or is this due to a lack of quality in the treatment? So there's all sorts of ways that we can think about being a little bit more creative and a little bit more proactive. Just one last thing. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to move a lot of things, in particular trainings, to virtual settings. And this has demonstrated how processes are so much more important than training individuals. You can train an individual, but the individual will leave. The process will really build the capacity of the organization rather than an individual. And we live in the age of data, and data has only so much value until it is analyzed into information. It's only once it's analyzed into information that you get that added value. So national regulatory authorities and other organizations, and Stan has pointed out the importance of collaboration across different organizations, this added value comes from the pooling of data and from the resulting analysis. So we need to have, it's not just about detecting the problem and then bringing it up. We have to have systems that allow us to manage the information and processes. So I think there's a lot that can be done in this area. And with that, I'll give the time back to you.
Thank you, Pennett. So last question to Dr. Philippe Duneton before I hand over to our commentator who will help us to make sense of all that. Philippe, maybe one key message you can give us. We heard all these different perspectives from our fellow panelists today. So what do you think is the way forward for our regions to have more visibility or more awareness on the issue of poor quality medicines? Your golden advice I'm asking for.
No, and thank you. I think that my message would be that we need to build on this effort and building blocks. I think that all the people have put part of the solution, and I think that the takeaway is, yes, there is there is no silver bullet to fix it, but I think that if we can have that comprehensive approach and building on the initiative and the work with the country, I think we can change really the situation. I would like to emphasize also with the need to have a regional approach, because I think that the countries are facing more or less the same kind of challenges, the same kind of potential, same distributors. And I think that across the border, it's quite important to have the same policy. So again, a very good contribution. If you look at the building blocks, we may find a way to address that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I tell our attendees one more time, very sorry that we won't have time for questions. Appelma and other organizers will try to help us to answer them. However, we have one more speaker and you should listen to her. She is actually also an expert, and she listened very carefully at 2:30 in the morning to our conversation. And she's the founder and principal of Network Strategies for Health, and she will help us to make sense of all the different perspectives. Thank you so much for staying awake, Catherine, and being patient. And over to you. And now we can't hear you, although your mic is muted, unmuted. So we did a test, of course. Now let's see if Catherine can solve the problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Catherine.
Very good. Apologies. Seems my computer is getting tired at 2:30 in the morning. Thank you all. It's been a really rich discussion. I very much appreciate the organizers' effort and the leadership of everyone on the panel and in this event today. I think it's given me cause for great optimism, building on the progress that we've seen to date and seeing the degree of expertise and understanding of these issues. We started this panel, an event, with a brilliant introduction by Ambassador Seydoux, who I think laid out a very comprehensive agenda and indicated growing political support. And I can't underemphasize the importance of that political support, particularly for an issue like this of substandard falsified medicines, which is in many ways insidious. It's invisible in many cases. It's difficult to understand. It's deeply technical, and it presents itself as subtle treatment failures or difficulties that gradually erode trust, as Pranette has pointed out. We then heard about the ASF agenda, which I think this panel was able to build upon very richly, particularly in the areas of prevention, detection, and response as well. I think that it's really important to highlight one of the points Pranette raised, and that is that this is not a theoretical, hypothetical problem. People are ill and dying as a result, and it struck me that the figure of 286,000 deaths a year of children under 5 in sub-Saharan Africa as a result of substandard and falsified medicines, and that's one child every 2 minutes, is really sobering. However, we have heard some very, very important areas of progress in the Southeast Asia region that we need to be celebrating and building upon. The issue around surveillance is critical here, as we've heard, and the initiatives like the WHO, GSMS, and the work that IDO at Oxford is doing with Globe and Surveyor really rely on reporting by regulators, reporting by academics, by citizens, by civil society organizations, and even journalists. And it is that reporting, just as it is with disease outbreaks, that gives us the foundation and the basis to act. So we need to see reporting as a sign of a strong system performing its key functions, and not something to shy away from, and not something to be concerned about going public with. And as we see in the region, cross-border reporting of disease outbreaks over the last 20 years, really helping to build a solid foundation, as we see with COVID, in terms of very effective responses and containment in the region. So too, I think we can see progress from countries like Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, in building the laboratories, the capabilities for testing, innovating in the deployment of screening tools and technologies. And this needs to continue with greater degrees of investment and ongoing support. I think in some respects, we could even say that the malaria initiatives in the region have been a game changer for medicine's quality in the region, because it has been through malaria initiatives that early investments in these critical functions have been made. Now, not only are we seeing, as Dr. Bunchu described, very consistent and ongoing testing of medicine's quality. We've heard also from Myanmar about the ability to build their capabilities, but also what happens once you have information and the responses we heard from Cambodia. So ensuring that regulators have the necessary tools to test products is a critical part of their oversight more generally. And I think COVID, as many people have indicated, it's shining a light and exacerbating something that has actually already been there, and that the foundations that malaria investments have made will help to address this broader challenge. We heard from both Anthony and Pranette about the supply chain challenges that COVID is exacerbating, including shocks in terms of ingredient shortages, border closures, limited supply of finished products. This is all absolute fodder for substandard and falsified medicines to proliferate. We also know that with increased demand of essential medicines that aren't accompanied by supply, there are possibilities of substandard medicines entering the market due to disruptions or pricing pressures that also create pressures on suppliers. And as Philippe indicated, a lot of bad actors taking advantage of this situation in creating and distributing falsified medicines. So these market forces are important, and by improving the way that we procure medicines and collaboration that regulators and procurement entities have together can help to improve planning and to sort of anticipate spikes in demand, but also to squeeze out the market from poor quality, substandard falsified medicines entering the market. I think we also have to recognize that as the COVID crisis evolves, there is a growing burden on regulators. So regulators need the support of the public and of their ministries. And we don't want to see that burden result in either relaxing or weakening the post-market initiatives that are so critical to ensuring that new innovative products get to the last mile. I think we also had some very exciting progress in terms of innovations from Stan in terms of blockchain analysis of supply chain, and from Celine, the great long-standing research being done with respect to screening technologies and tools. These advances are going to be important, and I would like to think that COVID presents another imperative and urgency for greater investment in development of those tools and equipping regulators to use the right tools at the right time in the right fashion. Finally, we also talked a bit more about transparency in the supply chain, and just to elaborate the importance of sharing information, of industry sharing information about traceability, changes in supply, impact of disruptions, regulators sharing information with each other as they see problems emerge, as they see hotspots potentially with products, as Pernette alluded to, prescribers getting involved in terms of what to understand and improve forecasting, and clearly the public being able to become more vigilant. We have really seen that the growing expertise and cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region in the COVID response has been heralded and looked to by much of the world as effective. And I think we can all take heart and again, be optimistic that in the areas of medicine's quality, these approaches to building strong capacity in systems, strong governance, and improved cooperation across borders will also likewise ensure the benefits of medicines we can trust. And on that final note, just to encourage all of you on the call to join the campaign of Medicines We Can Trust. It was born out of the Southeast Asia region in 2018 and is a coalition of over 350 organizations around the world. We have a clearinghouse of information. Many of the people on this panel are very active and engaged in sharing their expertise and knowledge and encouraging all stakeholders to become more engaged in this issue. And so with that, I thank you again for the opportunity. It's been a tremendously rich discussion, and look forward to future work and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for wonderfully summing up the discussion, highlighting some key messages. Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, that's all we have for you. This was the 5th and final edition of the Malaria Game Changers Health Innovation Series. And I thank all our panelists to stay with us as well until the end. I thank all the attendees. Hopefully you have some interesting key takeaways. Of course, we apologize one more time that we were not able to go into the Q&A mode. My colleagues will try to help to answer questions that you have posted in the chat. And nevertheless, don't forget, in about 1 or 2 days, we usually have the video up and we can share the links and you can watch it on the Appelma YouTube channel or on other social media. So if you want to see it again, or you would like to share it with some colleagues, please do so. I think it's a very important, interesting topic in our fight to end malaria. So please help us to share this webinar or seminar. That's it for today. Have a good day or good night, especially to Catherine, and stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you very much. That's it for today.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.